Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Arctic Dungeon Master. Today, I'm going to do something a little different. Going to try something new here. I want to give some tips and tricks on how to run the first campaign, the Caravan of Peril. Now, this is the first game that I ever DM'd as a Dungeon Master or Game Master, and it was also the first game that about 95% of all my players who started this campaign had ever played in Dungeons and Dragons. At the time, I only had two guys who had ever played D&D before, let's just say that at the time as well, I had 10 people at my table playing as players. So I had a lot on my plate, but I just want to give some tips and tricks on what I did as a Dungeon Master that made the game run smoothly. And as I'm looking at doing this campaign again for my kids, I thought that I would shoot this video. Yeah. Currently, everyone is my game that started with this is on 8 or 9, I believe. They are about to go into. They are going to play Chaos in the Countryside in January. We've taken a break for the holidays. And because we tried to do it before Thanksgiving, before everyone's schedule got hectic, and it did not work out. And so I was like, all right, well, with the holidays and Alaska shutting down again, January. So January, we're gonna pick up on Chaos in the Countryside, and until then, let's talk about Caravan of Peril. So one of the things that I would recommend is that you read that campaign from the beginning to the end and plot out what's going to happen. And I would put all that information in a notebook. If you plan on doing the first year of Dungeon in a Box, year 1, which is titled Secrets of Greenwold, you can put the whole 12-month campaign in this single subject notebook. And the reason why I know this is because that is exactly what I did. If you would like to know how I do my notebooks, I will put a video of that at the end. It won't be for Secrets of Greenwold, it will be for my Stranger Things campaign, The Hunt for the Thessal Hydra, but it's the same process. So let me repeat. The first thing that I would recommend is that you read the little campaign book. It's only 25 pages, so you can't go wrong. And then I would plan out, I would actually course out what is going on each day. Alright. The first thing that you need to do is you need to set up what wagons are going to be on the caravan. Very basic, and you don't really need to think anything up because they give you wagons in the campaign book. Right here on page 2, they give you the wagons. All you gotta do is roll a dice, and I believe there's like 8 wagons or 10 wagons or so. There's not a whole lot of wagons. Oh, actually, you got to roll for a number of wagons too. So it's 2d4s plus 2. So that lets you know how many wagons you're going to be for your characters to protect. And 2 of them are already picked out for you. You got to have Doggle Stonepick, and you got to have Findazzle. Because if you don't have Findazzle, the whole campaign goes to crap. trust me, Findazzle, you need Findazzle. He is like the rock for my campaign. It's ridiculous because he's actually designed to just come in and out of the campaign, but he has pretty much been in every campaign we've had. Everyone loves him. Everyone was great to see him come back when he came back. So Findazzle, you definitely need him. I would pick maybe the Diplomat, and the only reason why I say pick the Diplomat is because it's a freebie mini right here. And this comes in the campaign box. It's the little noble. So, I'm gonna repeat again. First thing to do is read the campaign book. Use all the tables in here. Set up what wagons are going to be, set up the different encounters that they're going to be going from each day. I would write down what terrain they're going to encounter, or you can skip the terrain, or you can just do terrain and skip an encounter creature. That's totally fine and totally up to you as the Dungeon Master, but I would recommend putting it all in the notebook and planning it out. Okay, so my second bit of advice is to have your PCs interact with the NPCs. Alright. Now, it says that this trip can take between 15 to 20 days. So, you're going to have that many encounters. But what is really important is to have, at the end of each of those encounters, have them come to a campsite like this. Alright, now you don't need all these little fancy figurines like I have. Like I have the party here, the PC party here. I have the NPCs all in front of their different little wagons. But you don't need the fancy stuff. You're going to get Findazzle. He's guaranteed. Alright, you're going to get Findazzle. You're going to get a noble in the skinny minis. That's guaranteed. But what you're not going to get is you're not going to get anything for Drogal Stonepick. And that can be resolved by printing out your own cardboard mini and making that yourself. And to be honest, that is exactly what I did in the first campaign, the first time I ran this. And I didn't get these little townspeople until much later. And it wasn't until Greyhaven was actually attacked by dragons that I had that cool stuff. And at the time, I only had 4. I didn't have all 5 of those. So, it's cool. And I got 5 more than I need to base. And I haven't done that yet. But it's cool as well. But you got to have your PCs interact with the NPCs, the non-playable characters, because you need them to interact, especially with Findazzle. Alright, Findazzle has to be interested in the NPCs. Findazzle needs to interact with the PCs. They need to interact back with Findazzle. They need to establish some sort of connection with Findazzle so that at the final battle, Findazzle goes with them and helps them. And also, they will want to be with Findazzle and be hired on by Findazzle at the end of this game, this campaign session. Because all of that helps session 2 work out much, much better. Alright? So, you gotta have your NPCs and PCs interact with each other. And it doesn't matter if you want to have like your little rogue guy try to steal his alcohol. Alright. That's a cool little interaction you could do one night. Another thing is if you do get the noble person and it's the background where they just came back from a diplomatic mission and took the arrow to the elbow. If you got, it is done by the way by elf barbaric tribe. If you have an elf, racism right there. He does not. He will not like elves. I don't have an elf here because I believe this is a human ranger. But if you got an elf on your team, he will not like whatever elf there is. That is just something that add tension. But your character has to be better than that and be like, I will save them. Or if they let him die, that is something that my characters let him get shot when the goblins attacked. So, that's my second bit of advice before I jump to the third one. My second one is to have your players interact with the NPCs. Now, just rolling on to the third one because we are here, and I talked about goblins attacking. I get why they used goblins for this first session. I totally understand it. Goblins have a low hit point, 13 hit points, very low. Totally understandable. But you got to use goblins the right way. Alright? Something that this campaign doesn't emphasize. Alright? Is that you got to use goblins the right way, and they got to strike terror into the hearts of your NPCs. I don't care if your not NPCs, your player characters. I don't care if your player characters are level 5 or level 8 or level 10. If goblins do not strike fear into them, you are totally using them wrong. And I myself have done this mistake myself. I did not use goblins right. I don't think so. I might have had an abundance of goblins because I was using every freaking goblin I had my hands on. And I still don't think that they struck fear. It wasn't until later on that I started using goblins the right way and making them a challenge to my players. And if you want, you can add in your own 3D terrain. Alright? Like, I'm just adding some little trees here. And from the player's perspective, they look cool. Alright? And another thing that this allows you to do is you can hide goblins behind the trees. You don't need to let your players know there are goblins there. You don't need to place goblins out on the board until they roll a high perception. Is that evil? Absolutely. But isn't it cooler to just have arrows come out of nowhere and hit your players if they fail a roll? Oh, that's another thing I do. Is instead of me rolling for their AC, they roll for it, and there's a totally different chart, and that's a totally different topic for another day on how to do that. But going towards the end of this campaign session, the goblins are going to attack the caravan. Alright, you can't get around it. That is a encounter that needs to happen at the end. Alright? And for that to work, there has to be a distraction. Okay? You got to have a distraction with the wolves, alright? The wolves are trained to cause a distraction for you to focus on one wagon, alright? So all the attention gets diverted to a wagon, alright? As the players are attacking the wagon, just moving NPCs to safety. As the players are attacking the wolves at that wagon, just let arrows start flying out and hitting them. And they gotta roll another perception to focus their attention that way to see what is going on. So keep them occupied with the wolves, have arrows come, then they need to look that way. While all that is going on, you got the big ogre bunny dude who's going to steal a wagon, and then he's going to hitch on out of there. As soon as he gets that wagon, he's almost instantly out of there. And that's going to be the one with all the treasure. And so your players are going to have to go get that wagon. There's no way around it. That's part of what they got hired for. But first they got to take care of all this. Now, this gets easier, because as soon as this guy hitches out with a wagon, and don't be afraid to use these cardboard terrain, as soon as he's out with the wagon, that's when you start that wagon chase, and everyone goes after him, and he's like super fast, and he loses them in 1.5 rounds, which is ridiculous because he's this big guy, but it just adds excitement. And then they have like another round to make sure that they stay on his trail. It is crazy cool. If it all works out too, you know, I mean, the roll of the dice could fail. As soon as he's gone though, so do all the goblins. So then all that's left are the wolves. Now the wolves are easy to defeat if they get defeated, but then they too also leave. So the main focus is really to go after the big ogre bunny dude. And that is how you should run that encounter. And you should definitely have, I mean, it is up to your players too, whether or not they want to go chase the ogre bunny dude. Now, if they do decide that, that is when Findazzle decides to go play with them. And I say play because he comes in as a level 4 wizard, and everyone else comes in as a level 1, essentially. Now, if your players come into this session at a higher level, make sure Findazzle is also leveled up. It creates a little bit more work for you, but it pays off because he is someone that they will want to be with. Okay? Now, let's say that your players decided to go after the ogre in the wagon. They got to stay on his trail. And if they do end up being successful in finding his trail, which, by the way, if they fail and Findazzle has decided to go with them, just fudge your dice rolls and have Findazzle find the hideout. So, here we are at the final encounter. Okay, so, just for fun, I have added my trees over here just because I had them down. Why not? I have also thrown a whole bunch of 2D terrain as well, since it does come in the campaign. Might as well use them. You don't have to make all the terrain. I think this 2-dimensional terrain works just great. I personally think that this stuff works out better than the 3D terrain that they got going on in year 3, but that's just my personal opinion. I think that if I want 3D, I think that I want to make it myself. But if you ask me, I think the plastic terrain that they have in year 2 at the end is primo, the best idea they could have thought of for terrain. But like I said, that's my personal opinion. Going back to this encounter and what's going on. I know that the campaign says and only supplies you with like 4 or 6 goblins. And that's cool. You got the leader over there who happens to be a goblin werewolf. And that is how he's able to train the wolves to do their distraction stuff. You might still have the ogre, depending on if you've hunted him down and killed him or not. That's completely up to how your dice roll for your campaign. Okay? Now, if some of the wolves died or if some of the goblins died, still use those. They're brand new goblins. Start them back over at 13 for the goblins, and I don't know what the wolves are. But use them again. And there's like 3 wolves that come in the campaign. But if you happen to have minis, throw those on. Alright, I still have the 2D skinny minis. I don't have them on here, but I've got them. to be completely honest, I have taken all these that are set up for chaos on the countryside. All of these goblins and ogre and werewolf and wolves, those are for a completely different session, and they just happen to already be pulled and ready for that session. Alright. So that is why I have these. But your numbers on the board, especially if, like me, I had 10 people playing, and I'm glad I had extra enemies because it made it more exciting. It would have been over in a jiffy if I had 10 people against the 6 enemies that was recommended, even at year 1. Now, having them overpowering the heroes is totally cool, because remember, there's Findazzle, and he is a level 4 wizard, and Reduce is an awesome spell to run against these little goblins. Okay? Just throwing that one out there, alright? It might not be Fireball, but it still is pretty effective against goblins. Alright? And he does that once or twice, and everyone was like, oh, Findazzle is awesome! And before that, he gave them wine. So, of course, Findazzle was awesome to their eyes. Alright. So, that's what I wanted to talk about with the final encounter is, boom, have everyone fight. Make the fight epic. The fight needs to be epic because this is the first session for this campaign. So, you need to hook the players into thinking that this game is awesome. And Findazzle is awesome, and that they want to help Findazzle. Because after all these goblins are killed, you get this loot. And that is also a loot that is at the end of the session. And now that we're here, that's something that I want to talk about. So let me switch camera angles again. Now that we're at the end of the video, I just want to leave you with one more piece of advice. And really, it's just a little aftermath stuff. So, the campaign book talks about you recovering this treasure. And I want to tell you that this treasure here is not that important for the rest of the campaign. Because in session 2, this changes into a chalice that you recovered on the trail, and that if you want to, you can take to the chapel and they'll give you a little bit of gold. But say absolutely nothing about this. In fact, this never popped up in my campaign until they got the dragon orb, and then boom, I had it. No one said anything about the weird coloration on the back of the tile because it wasn't swampy. But they still dealt with this. So, I wouldn't even bring this up if I was you. If I was to do this again, I would not have this in my arsenal of 2D terrain in session 1. I'd save it for when they get the orb, the dragon orb, which happens to be in session 3, by the way. Splendors of the Sewer. But I wouldn't let them say they didn't get any treasure. Let them know they got a cup, a chalice. That looks like it should be returned to the chapel. Make sure it has the Duke's branding on it. You'll understand later. Just say it has the Duke's branding on it. And everyone's going to be like, oh, the Duke. And then when you meet the Duke, you'll be like, douche. But you didn't hear that one from me. Trust me. My player characters go around saying, Duke douchemore. Or the Duke douchebag. Or douchebag Duke. And it's just like, guys, come on. But players are going to do what players do. Anyhow. I hope you had fun with this. Something completely new. Just a reminder that this is not the dragon orb. So forget about that. Make sure that your players get hired by Findazzle to be his protectors in the city as they approach Greyhaven. So definitely make sure that you got that connection with Findazzle. My players love Findazzle. I don't know why, But I heard that that doesn't work all the time with other parties. And so I want to emphasize with you to please make that work. You need your players to like Findazzle, to love Findazzle, to do anything for Findazzle. Because, spoiler, you're going to have to smuggle him into the city. So it might be worthwhile to have your players think about that as they're leaving the session. How are we going to smuggle him into the city? I happen to have a flesh golem on my campaign, so he just had Findazzle shrink himself and put him into his body, and Findazzle hid inside the flesh golem's body. Now, to be honest, Findazzle and the flesh golem are tight, and currently Findazzle is working with Argus, who you'll find out who he is later, on how to reattach his arm, because he recently lost it thanks to the drow. Am I spoiling too much? Have I got you as the DM hooked for further adventures? I hope so. As crazy as my hair is, the adventures in Dungeon in a Box are even crazier. So, those are my tips on how to run the first session for Secrets of Greenwold. If you want to play this game, then click on the link below to Dungeon in a Box, subscribe to Year 1, and you too can get started on this wonderful adventure with you and your friends. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, totally leave a comment on what you thought of this video. I'll interact with you. I'll reply back. I promise. Just don't spam me, alright? So leave a comment on if you've played this game, what you did. Leave a comment on my ideas, what you thought of them. And if you've played this, what would you recommend doing? There are no wrong answers in my comment section, unless they're hateful. Have a good one. I'll see you guys next time.